You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And before we get started, I do want to let you know that Brian Smith is brought to you by LinkedIn. They're the college football sponsor across the Locked On Podcast Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He's Brian Smith. He is the Locked On recruiting guru. We're going to talk about what's going on with Ole Miss, and we're also going to get his opinion after the break of who the top 5 SEC head football coaches is at the moment. But let's start off right here, Brian. Ole Miss got a commitment from Jerome Myles. Jerome Myles is a top 200 player on 2 of the scouting services, probably ranked as a high 3-star on another one, and then Rivals has him way down, like absurdly down compared to the other 2 rankings, which, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing?
I'm guessing they haven't scouted him like live. That'd be my guess. He's a Utah kid. That doesn't surprise me. So yeah. Nothing like having live eyes. You know the deal. Living in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, you're going to see what most of the prospects you need to see, but I don't know any scouts living in Utah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have a situation. He's like 6'2". He's nearly 200 pounds now. And he is a burner. He is a typical Ole Miss, bigger, larger style wide receiver.
He does fit that. And Lane's had success with it. So I'm assuming that's one of the pitches that the Rebels are using. Hey, you can be like player A, B, and C that have went on to the NFL, pick whichever one you want. This is how we're going to use you, and I've got a track record. It's not a very difficult pitch if you're Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. Yeah,
he tracks. If you want to comp right now, whenever I look at his film, he reminds me a little bit of Dante Moncrief. If you're looking for an Ole Miss style receiver that you can compare to this guy, he's a straight guy. He has all the speed in the world, but he has the chance to grow into somebody extremely physical in Oxford.
Yeah, I think he'll add another 15 pounds in college. He'll play at 210, 212, something like that. Yeah, that's an easy way to look at it. Like, there aren't many guys that height, that weight, that can also outrun a big-time defensive back. He'll be a guy that can do that.
Yeah, he's a pretty high-level guy. I'm hoping that he eventually gets an invite to the Under Armour All-American game. Me and Brian's always there at the Under Armour game.
That's right.
It's one of my favorite events of the year, so we'll see if he can go. He's rated fairly highly on ESPN, and as I tell everybody, Brian, the ESPN rankings are the ones you want to pay attention to for the Under Armour game because those guys are in it together.
Oh, absolutely. That game, it's good on good. So that's also an idea. Like, kid from Utah, he ain't going against Utah kids at that game. So he'll be playing against Alabama, Texas, Georgia kids, stuff like that. He'll have to earn it, but it'll also give him a chance to shoot up the rankings more because nobody's seen that kid live. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's seen that kid. So that's a great opportunity for him too.
And his high school is Corner Canyon, which was Jackson Dart's high school.
Which that's ironic. And that's a really good program. They produce really good offenses. They throw the ball around. They got some ball players.
Was it Zach Wilson, the kid that is at Ohio State now, went there, and Jackson Dart? It's like 3 straight quarterbacks have done really well.
Yeah, they must have a really good coaching staff there to make that happen. That's impressive.
Yeah, very much so. And speaking of good quarterbacks, talking about those, Keelon Russell was crystal balled by somebody at 24/7 to Ole Miss. He did an official visit over the weekend to Oxford. Everything I've heard from family members and Keelon Russell through interviews and all that talk about how amazing the trip was and how wonderful it was. And if he goes over from SMU, because SMU has unsurprisingly a good NIL program. They're kind of known for being the original NIL team, death penalty and all. But if Keelon Russell does switch, he kind of fits stylistically to what they got with Anthony Maddox the year before. He kind of fits with what Lane Kiffin is doing now at the quarterback position after he saw Jaden Daniels. It's like Jaden Daniels completely changed the calculus for Lane Kiffin in recruiting quarterbacks?
If a kid will take to the craft in the pocket, which is really the bottom line at quarterback, especially at the highest level, if you add in the sauce that is the legs of, not have to be Daniels, but somebody can at least make the first guy miss and extend a play, the bonus is going and getting 15 yards down the field. But if you can do that with Kiffin's offense and the weapons that he has, you can be a 35-point per game team against the elite teams, and then the most teams are 45. Like you could be over 40 on average. That's hard to do in the SEC, but Kiffin's got enough track record. You give him a dynamic quarterback, things can get really interesting.
Is it a situation to where like you put it like RG3 crawled so Jaden Daniels can walk so the next generation of quarterbacks can run? Because you can kind of see that stylistic thing is just working its way through college football right now.
There aren't very many guys with those gifts, but when there is one that has, has some length, that has some athleticism like a Russell, why wouldn't you think that? Because, they watch those kids film and they saw them go from college to pro, et cetera. Yeah, I'm sure there is. And you can experiment too. I'm sure Kiffin has looked at some of LSU's film and thought, well, how could I use Maddox? And, that's part of it. It's a different style, but they use Dart to run. He's just a bigger body, more powerful guy. He's not twitchy and going to make three guys miss in the hole, though. Some of these other kids, I think it's pretty interesting because you add a whole nother dynamic. So it is fascinating because Kiffin's had success with pro-style guys, but now he's shifted.
I tell people all the time, Jackson Dart has more Tim Tebow in him than you realize.
It's a big dude. He'll run over somebody.
Yeah, him hurdling over that LSU defender last year. Yeah, that was great. It was like, man, that's a big guy going over that and moving that 100%. Quickly. Yeah. So thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, Brian's going to give us his top 5 SEC head football coaches. Stick around for that. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low. You're not sure if your team can pull out the W. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up and say to yourself, it's time to get back in this game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends and get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent on your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards to climb that leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go. It's now free on the App Store and Google Play. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your parts guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day with the biggest stories without all of that screaming and shouting. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, Brian. All week, we did a top 5 list of SEC coaches, and I've been asking every one of my guests to give me a countdown of 5 through 1 of who they are. I gave my list last night, so everybody saw that, and we're going to get Tom's tomorrow. But looking at the top 5 list, who is your number 5 SEC head football coach right now?
I would ironically go with Kiffin. He's proven enough. He's coached at multiple places as a head coach, great play caller, maybe the best play caller in the country. The ability for him to move up that list in the future is based on the following. He's got to prove he can win big games. That's the one knock on him. And if he can figure that out this year, he's got his best roster he's had at Ole Miss. He could ascend up to number 2 or number 3.
Number 4.
This one may or may not surprise some people, but I just a fan and just following his history before he became a head coach, and now he is Elko at A&M. I know he hasn't coached as the head coach there yet, but winning at Duke is hard. They were actually really good the last couple of years, and it's Duke. And he's a great defensive mind and a great recruiter, and he put together a good staff. I think he's going to do really, really well. And I just don't think there's any way that he's not. Like, they got every resource known to man. It's a cheat. Like, if Kiffin was at A&M with all their resources, he'd be higher too. But that's my number 4 guy.
Number 3.
Number 3 is probably not what you would call a major shock on the list. Then again, it depends on your perspective. But I was impressed with what Heupel did at Tennessee when he got there, because I thought that was going to be a train wreck for a while. They're at least pretty good every year, even when they didn't have defensive players, and now they've got them. I think they're going to be a pain in the side for everybody moving forward.
Number 2.
Number 2 is not a shock. Brian Kelly at LSU, successful at Notre Dame, successful at LSU. Although I think they may have a little more problem this year than most people think. Number 1 is obviously Kirby Smart. If anybody needed
free space,
yeah, that doesn't count. And I could have went a lot of other ways. Like Venables could be a guy. You could talk about other people too, but those are my comfort zones with people. Last on the list right now might be Billy Napier, the way he's doing at Florida, but that's another story. That's a train wreck right there. It's
crazy to think about Billy Napier. If the coach of Florida should never have below an 8-win football team.
Yeah, I mean, it's the easiest jobs.
3 hours from that campus.
It's insane. Jacksonville's 3 hours, Orlando, Tampa, or Wes. You know, he's just over 3 hours to Tallahassee. You got the Daytona. Come on. And they have found a way to fail over and over again. That's really hard to do at UF. It really is.
It's kind of like Dan Mullen kind of broke that program.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is, but they're not very good, man. And I expect him to get fired this year.
All right. And before we get out of here, you did not have Kalen DeBoer on your list. Tell me why.
The reason is because I don't think he's a fit at Alabama. It's not that he can't coach. I just think he's in the wrong place. I've heard too many things about the back office, because if you just go on coaching acumen, he took the schools out, he's top 5. But I've heard too many things about being discombobulated with recruiting. They had a kid committed they didn't even call, etc. So that's pulled back the reins for me. Game day coaching, play calling, and all that, he's elite. But this is about the entirety of the program, and recruiting is massive. And they've goofed it up a little bit so far at Alabama, so I've got him on hold.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Brian Smith, the Florida football scout. What have you got going on this weekend, buddy?
Going down to OT7 in your neck of the woods in Orlando. So, Kissimmee. Elite players all over the place, and now that the May evaluation period has started, going to see prospects all over the place. It's a lot of fun.
Who's the big name prospects that you're looking forward to getting down there and see?
OT7, there'll be 100 kids.
Okay.
It's just every game has Power 5 kids. Elite as it gets.
In a situation like that, and you're looking at all those kids and so much is going on, how do you organize notes and things like that? Your takeaways, that feels like a job in and of itself.
You take voice notes or you write on a pad or both, because there's no way in the world you can memorize what happened. Impossible.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. Is it at Wide World of Sports?
No, it's at the there's a facility in Kissimmee just on the south edge of it. It's got tons of fields. It's meant for that. And it's called Austin Tyndall. It's been there forever, and it's the same spot again this year.
Okay. Anyway, we'll talk to you later, and you be safe heading down there, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, sir.
Take care, bud.